Sheena said, if there's things that aren't covered tonight, we will absolutely do our best to answer them for you. What we've done is we've taken your questions that came in and we've kind of grouped them and they will be answered as in groups or in bundles, more or less, to some extent. Anything that isn't covered, we will please send it on to us. You can, as Sheena said, you can pop it into the question and answers, or come back to us after the webinar and we'll get an answer for you. But for now, I'm going to hand you over to Kieran and Mary. You're very welcome, and thanks for joining us this evening. And it's all yours now.
Thanks very much, Maura. Firstly, welcome to everybody, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. I know myself and Maura discussed doing this a couple of months ago. We decided that the summer months was definitely not the time to attend an insurance seminar, so we left it to a dreary Tuesday evening instead, when everybody be in attendance. So I hope everyone enjoyed the summer on the water, and again, it's great that everybody is here tonight. I just introduce myself first, and my colleague Mary. My name is Kieran Whelan. I head up the Enterprise and Sport division in Marsh, Ireland. I've over 27 years experience. I'm beginning to feel a little bit old now, managing, working in insurance, and as I said, I head up the sports and charity and education practice in Marsh. I'm joined by Mary Donnelly. Mary is one of our expert claims consultants, and Mary's working 13 years in the industry, and she looks after a lot of our larger clients in terms of managing their claims process and their claims management. And we firmly believe that the management of claims and accident reporting is a fundamental part of the whole insurance program. I suppose, to give a little bit of background to Marsh, we're the largest insurance broker in Ireland. The other wing of our operation might be more familiar to people is Mercer, so they're on the kind of life side, but we are a worldwide broker, and we would have a significant footprint in the sporting sector, particularly in the UK and here in Ireland. We're lucky to partner with the Federation of Irish Sport, and we look after a lot of the NGBs and their respective clubs in terms of their insurance programs, and we were delighted to work with Moira back in April to take over the program for Canoeing Ireland. So I think the purpose really of tonight is for us to give you a sense, an overview of the program that is in place for insurance that extends out to the clubs, what aspects are attributed to the clubs, and then Mary is going to talk in a lot more detail around managing claims and being in a position to defend claims and the overall claims process. So I suppose just to start off, to give, I suppose, a sense of the insurance market, probably the boring piece, I'm afraid, but it has been very, very challenging in the last couple of years, and I'm sure many people have seen in the media there has been significant challenges for people, particularly in the leisure industry or commercial sport or adventure industry, where a lot of businesses have ceased trading because of increased insurance costs. And that's probably largely due to an increase in claim awards in recent years, where there was change to court limits back 5-6 years ago, the high level of duty of care. And when you benchmark our court awards to Britain or the UK and Europe, they were significantly higher. So that has led to a shrinkage of underwriters and has made it a very, very difficult place to trade in from an insurance broking perspective. So there are concerns. There is obviously a lot of work going on in the background. There has been the judicial review of the Book of Quantum 3-4 months ago, which was certainly welcomed from our perspective, because we expect that will bring award costs back in line with where they should be, and overall that should lead to more sustainable insurance costs. We haven't seen evidence of it yet, but we would anticipate over the next 12 to 18 months that will happen. So it's something that we're keeping a close eye on, and hopefully will bring more insurers to the market. But I suppose in Marsh we try to control the controllables per se, and that's really controlling the risks within NGBs and the clubs. And if you can control the risks and prevent the claim from happening, it leads to better outcomes in terms of going for solutions. So the controlling of claims data, accident investigation, and having strong governance and local club risk controls is hugely important, and that's one area that we would absolutely encourage that clubs have in place. So it's, I suppose, to summarize that, there's certain things going on that we can't control, but you certainly can control risk and be very proactive about it. And as Moira has touched on, there is a culture of risk averseness. Obviously, with water involved, it's hugely important, and we certainly welcome that. And that is certainly reflected, I suppose, in the claims history for Canoe Ireland, that there has been a very prudent and proactive approach by the clubs in recent years. So when we I suppose sat down back in April, our goal was to put together a program that would be of benefit to the clubs, where the core classes of insurance would extend out to the representative clubs, the 80 clubs connected to Canoeing Ireland. And I suppose the core liability, the four main ones, would be employers' liability, public liability, professional indemnity, and personal accident. Therefore, class of insurance where we have a program extending to all the clubs. The directors and officers aspect is something that's under review, and we're trying to work on a solution. It was an area where individual committees and clubs probably didn't have any aspect of protection, and we do feel that's important. It's a very difficult class of insurance to get at the moment because it's strained globally because of corporate challenges. But we think we're close to a solution where we can extend that aspect of core out to all the individual committees of the club, which we feel is definitely needed and hopefully will be welcomed. The travel aspect, then, we would also have a travel policy in place at NGB level, but there is potential to extend that out if required, if there was any club trips being arranged. Now, obviously, in the current COVID environment, that may not happen, but into the future, if clubs were going on trips, there is potential to extend that cover out to protect the club, and we'd be happy to do that. But if I was to dig a little bit deeper in terms of the actual covers and try to give a sense of what it means to each club, you know, obviously employers' liability is a key aspect of that, and people probably look at employers' liability and they immediately think of employees. And yes, you know, the NGB will have employees, and sub clubs may have employees and instructors coming in, but volunteers fall into that category, and all volunteers that act under the control and guidance of the club and administer the activities or coach the activities will be protected under employers' liability, and it basically protects the club for any accidental injury to club employees or volunteers acting on their behalf. The second aspect would be...
Sorry to interrupt there, Kieran. Just the slides aren't moving. I'm not sure if they're moving for anyone else.
Yeah, apologies, folks. Apologies about that. So I was touching on employers' liability, that volunteers are incorporated into that aspect of the insurance, and it protects the legal liability of the club against accidental injury. And the second aspect will be the public liability, and that protects the legal liability of the club in respect of accidental bodily injury to members and any members of the public. That would extend out to accidental loss of damage to third-party property and obviously nuisance. The third aspect of class of insurance that extends out to all the clubs is professional indemnity. And that's a hugely important aspect, because the first two, I suppose, to explain employers' liability and public liability, is accidental bodily injury when there's actually an injury to somebody. But the professional indemnity cover protects the legal liability of the club in respect of the profession. So in terms of the services that the club is providing, and it would protect the club in respect of any negligent act that is committed, obviously in good faith, not something that's recklessly or intentionally committed, but an act that's committed in good faith. And that could be libel, slander, breach of confidence, a data breach, equality, discrimination, a range of aspect of risks that can occur at club level. But once again, you have to reiterate that's something that's committed in good faith and would protect the club if an action was brought in respect of that class of insurance. So it's slightly different from employers' liability and public liability, where it's somebody that actually incurs an injury, and they would bring a case to prove in a court of law that there was negligence on behalf of the club in administrating the activity. So it's very, very important that, as I said, clubs have that professional indemnity cover as well. Personal accident cover is a straight benefits policy that is payable following any accidents while participating in Canoeing Ireland activities, and that extends to all members irrespective of age and competition of training. And I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail as I go through the slides. Travel cover, then, I've touched on again. I mentioned that in the original part, that is an aspect that if clubs are travelling, that we can extend that aspect of the cover. So I think a lot of the queries that we would regularly get in relation to NGBs is queries around particular activities. And am I covered for this? Am I covered for that? What happens if this happens? It's a natural concern that's going to be raised by people. I think it's important to outline that, you know, the cover that we have in place in Irish public bodies is the insurers. It is broad-based cover, but it needs to be underpinned by the clubs having responsibility to manage the risk assessments, ensure safety protocols are in place, and they give guidance and supervision around the event. That is paramount in protecting yourselves and obviously in defending a claim. So that while the cover can be very broad-based and there's nothing written into the black and white of the policy around levels of qualifications, numbers on water and stuff like that, the onus of responsibility is put back onto the club to adhere to Canoe Ireland protocols and club protocols around safety and ensure all club activities are managed in the appropriate manner. So that allows the club to give, or allows the insurer to give a broad-based policy on that basis. So you can see that, you know, competitions for Canoeing Ireland managed events are covered, all club competitions are covered, select, train and administer competitors to represent Ireland, all that aspects of activity is covered. There is cover for taster sessions and open days and trials. And the intention around that aspect would be that it's 1 or 2 days to try and encourage new members to come on board, and it wouldn't be to have a regular program of non-member activity that they would be encouraged to sign up and join the club. And then obviously all training in water and on-land training is covered, and then club and small fundraising events, club socials and small fundraising events also protected automatically, as well as training, conferences and education courses. There's a couple of referrals kind of built in. There would be only cover up to any event with attendance of 500 people. If that was to be exceeded, we would request that you would contact us in relation to that event, and we could explore to get the cover extended. The other aspect is obviously, you know, the fundraising events. The definition around fundraising events will be basic type fundraising events held in club properties, whether they're raffles, cake sales, etc. If clubs were running significant fundraising events, we would have to contact insurers to see are they appropriate. And again, it would be the responsibility of the club to measure the risk. We did have an NGB who, or a club that came to us a few years ago and ran a hot coal, walking over hot coal fundraiser, which certainly wasn't ideal, as you can imagine. It wasn't pleasant going to the insurance company because they came to us after the event. So it's so important, if unsure, to pick up the phone around any significant fundraising events, because the automatic cover is only in respect of small events. Some of the notes, as I said, again, you know, all the insurances are underpinned by prudent risk management. So it's all instructors. Instructors must be registered with Canoeing Ireland. Registered instructors employed directly by Canoeing Ireland or acting in a voluntary capacity are covered for activities within the clubs. There must be full compliance with policy procedures. Instructors acting independently must have their own insurance. So any commercial instructors that are acting outside of the control of the club or not under the guidance of the club are required to have their own insurance, and that's something clubs need to be aware of. Rental of club property, if third parties request to use clubs, they must have their own insurance, and clubs can put a check in place, and we're happy to support them in that regard. And there is obviously one condition that will be built into the policy, is a buoyancy aid requirement, but that's obviously excluded for elite international events, but that would be a fairly standard requirement across all clubs in terms of their safety protocol. So I think to try and give it again a sense of there's no list of conditions, particular conditions that would give, at times maybe in the past, have given risen to specific queries. It really is about a broad insurance program underpinned by prudent management of clubs around risk and safety, and being aware, if an event is to take place, that there is a risk assessment done around the conditions and what's involved in that event. And so the insurer essentially is supporting the clubs that they will make prudent decisions around safety and management of the activities, and then their legal liability is duly protected. Like anything, insurance is subject to terms and conditions. So, you know, there's always a challenge that if people act recklessly, that can have an impact on insurance. So the whole principle of acting in good faith is so important when reviewing and looking at events. The personal accident aspect of the policy is one that I just wanted to touch on in a little bit more detail, and this is of benefit to all members of Canoeing Ireland. And again, there's no legal liability to prove here, and this gives clubs a little bit of comfort in relation to somebody that may have a minor accident within a club activity, that without admission of liability, they can actually approach their member and outline that they have this benefit of cover. Obviously, you can see from the benefits on screen, some of them are in relation to significant accidents, which we don't want anybody to be in that position. But obviously, the key one is medical expense cover, where there is cover up to €1,000 with an excess of €75. That in itself helps to prevent against litigation on the basis that clubs can approach club members, and if they have medical expenses of a couple of €100, they can say, yes, we can make a claim, and it might prevent further litigation down the road. So it's usually important that people are aware that benefit does apply to all members. I suppose to just touch on a few of the questions that would have came in prior to the webinar. Some of the questions revolved around, are volunteers covered? Yes, as I touched on, they're within the definition of employees within the policy, but they must work under the control, supervision and guidance of the club and adhere to safety protocols. So it doesn't mean volunteers are coming in and come into clubs and given a free run activities. They have to be under the supervision and guidance of the club. Are club trips covered? Yes, official club trips are covered. Again, must be in adherence to the general standards of health and safety, and that would include supervision and child protection procedures. Are pool sessions during the winter covered? Yes, they are, and obviously coming into the winter time, clubs will be looking to use pools. There's no issue with that, and we can provide indemnity letters to the pool operators. That is fine, there's no problem there. Any situations where non-members can be covered for pool sessions. Again, it comes back to the taster sessions. If somebody wants to try it out, absolutely no issue there, but there shouldn't be regular programs of activities put in place for a 6 to 8 week program that involve non-members. After the taster sessions, it should be a requirement that they either sign up and become full members to be able to take part in all activities. Can Marsh quote for trustee liability cover? I touched on that in terms of the officers of the club, and we're currently working through a solution with Moira that hopefully we'll roll out to the clubs in the coming weeks, that will give that added protection for the individuals that kind of run the clubs. Insurance difference between instructors working as commercial providers and operating as volunteers in a club setting. If commercial instructors are providing training or providing programs not under the guidance of clubs, they must have their own insurance in place. If they are working as volunteers within a club under the control and supervision of that said club, then they will be indemnified under the policy. Is there cover for a group of friends arranging a paddle on the sea? No, that would be deemed a private social event and not under the control of any one club. So people will be pursuing that activity at their own risk. So I suppose the summary before I hand over to Mary, a claim is defended really before it happens, and the whole insurance program is underpinned by risk assessment, adequate training, qualified people, ensuring that this activity is safe and it's under the control and guidance and supervision of the club. It's collective responsibility for people taking part in that activity. There's no one person or no one requirement within insurance. There has to be one person leading an operation. It's collective responsibility, and it's adhering to the Canoeing Ireland procedures and protocols. After that, indemnities apply, and there is that comfort of protection for all the clubs out there. And as I alluded to at the start, for us, it's really about managing claims and accident reporting, because when clubs come to the situation where the claim does arrive, does arise, we want them to be in a situation where they can defend that claim appropriately, and that's when it's so important around accident reporting and having register and investigating all the incidents that do occur. So I think that at that point I'm going to hand over to Mary. I think there might be a few questions that we might come back to at the end. Well, apologies about the start there as well. That's my technology levels haven't dipped to one or two bits, but I'll hand you over to Mary now, and Mary can take it from here. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to move on to the slides?
Yeah.
So yeah, so the first slide will deal with claims process. So I suppose firstly, thanks for your time this evening, and I'll go through really the claims process, incident investigation, and defending claims would be the three main areas that I'll go through. So the first slide really deals with I suppose the two routes that an incident really, when it occurs, could go down. So it could be just simply a complaint, it could be a member of the public just wanting to highlight an issue, or it could be someone just wanting to, you know, get their medical expenses paid if they've had a minor incident, and that could be the end of it. But more often than not, unfortunately, you know, you will receive in a solicitor's letter, or a claim will go through the Personal Injuries Assessment Board, which I always refer to as the Injuries Board, so just in case anyone gets confused. So I think that was its previous name. So really, you know, rather than going through this particular slide, the main thing to highlight is, as soon as an incident occurs, it will start incurring costs. That is the main thing, whether it goes down the solicitor's route through the Injuries Board, or continues on to court maybe towards the end of its life. Costs will continue to escalate. And it's so that's why it's really important that you really do a robust investigation and provide insurers with the right information at the right time when an incident occurs. What they want is a lot of information, so that they'll be able to make a robust decision on liability when it comes to a claim. So, you know, whether it is a case that, look, we can defend this claim, we have really good training records, we've really good statements and accident report forms, or maybe, you know, they might say, look, this is possibly a claim to settle and go down that route. So it's about really providing the right information to the insurance company at the right time, so they can make the right decision rather than incurring a load of costs. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you're 2 years down the line and you've incurred costs on engineers' fees, investigation fees, you know, medical reports, and then the insurance company turn around and say, well, based on the information we have now, we need to settle the claim. So that's not the position that you want to be in. So the slide here just goes through the types of costs that you know you would see being incurred when a claim does come against you. So you have insured costs, but then you have, you know, uninsured costs as well that you wouldn't necessarily see an insurance company dealing with. So, you know, the insured costs would be, you know, the general ones, the personal injury award, or the damages that a claimant or a person making the claim will get. You know, legal costs, so their legal costs, the defence legal costs, it was that the insurance company will appoint a defence solicitor, so their legal costs. And then, as I've said, any engineers' investigation fees, loss adjusters' investigation fees, medical fees. But also, you know, there's the hidden kind of costs that a company and clubs yourselves would incur. It would be, you know, the time to investigate. So someone has to take time out of their busy schedule. You know, they could be doing something else, but they have to investigate when an incident occurs. You know, someone could be badly injured. You know, even time to you know, look after them, take them to hospital. You know, if it's a very serious incident, you know, any HSA visits or anything like that that would need to be dealt with. And really just the administration and the time it takes to you know, fill out the incident report forms, make sure you have your statements and your CCTV and your photographs, and then when it comes to actually reviewing, you know, how the incident occurred and how can we prevent it from occurring again. You know, is there training that needs to be done, and is there you know, a process or a procedure change that needs to be looked at, or do we need to look at our risk assessments? So when incidents occur, there's all these kind of hidden costs that would be incurred as well, and really the time that it takes for people to deal with those. So if you want to move on to the next slide. So I'll just take you through the Personal Injuries Assessment Board. I'm sure a lot of people out there will know, I suppose, the ins and outs of the Personal Injury Assessment Board, but it was set up in 2004. It assesses damages only. So when an insurance company lets the claim into the Injuries Board, they don't look at the liability side of things, they will just look at the medical report that they have in front of them, any loss of earnings and any costs that are incurred, that are presented to them, and they will put forward an award based on that. So it's an independent body and based on independent medical evidence. So the process is fairly simple. I'm sure we don't need to go through it in a huge amount of detail, but it can be a claim can be made by post or online. There's a small fee. The insurance company will review the incident, and they'll have 90 days from the date the claim is made to the injuries board to decide whether or not to let the claim into the injuries board for assessment. There's again a fee for the medical reports and any associated fees that come in for that. If it's allowed into the injuries board, an award is made, and it has to be accepted by both parties. If it is, it's legally binding, and that is your claim settled. However, if one or both parties decline the assessment, then an authorization is issued, and the case can proceed through litigation. So effectively, it gives the claimant leave to issue proceedings. So I suppose in relation to costs, solicitors' costs would not be I suppose included in the injuries board award. So a lot of times what you will see is in solicitors really kind of using the injuries board process to strategize around costs. So what they'll do is they might get an award of maybe 10,000, they might decline that award, and then they'll turn around maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that, and they'll ring up the insurance company and they'll say, look, you know, we want to settle this, but you know, we felt 10k was too low, we'll accept 15. And you know, they kind of, I suppose they know that they kind of have the insurance company in a difficult place at that particular time, because you know, the insurance company might want to settle it. They might feel that the 10,000, you know, they've accepted that would have been a good award, but you know, they know they won't settle it you know, for I suppose any less than the extra 5k that the solicitor wants to for them to pay out. So effectively, you know, they might say, okay, so look, it's the most economic option would be to settle for the 15k that the solicitor is asking for at the moment. You know, you might have to appoint a solicitor or an engineer, and an engineer would cost about, I'd say about €3,000 for an engineer to go out to investigate further if proceedings were issued. So really, I suppose it's a difficulty for the insurance companies, and it's just something to keep in mind that you know, solicitors do try and I suppose recover their costs through the injuries board by taking it out of the injuries board process, taking the claim out of the injuries board process. So I suppose then moving on to the statute of limitations. So this is effectively the amount of time the claimant or the person making the claim has to make to go and appoint a solicitor and make a claim. So they have 2 years from the date of the incident. So if it's just you know, a straightforward slip and trip, and you know, they break an ankle or whatever it is, they have 2 years from the date of that incident to make a claim. They have 2 years from the date of knowledge of the incident. So we'll say what we've said here is disease claims. So you know, that would be more your maybe asbestos related claims and any, you know, cancer type issues that would come out of that. But what we see a lot of is repetitive strain type injuries. So you know, you might not know straight away that you actually have an injury, and it's as soon as you're diagnosed with that repetitive strain injury, as soon as you go to the doctor and you know you have an injury, you have 2 years from the date of that period to make a claim. And that's where, you know, we sometimes run into problems, because you know, a person might be working with you for many years, and they say, well, look, I have a repetitive injury now, and it might be 12, 15 years old, but you know, they're still entitled to make a claim if they just knew about the issue within the 2 years. There's also 2 years from the date a minor turns 18. So up to the point they turn 18, and 2 years after that for a minor to make a claim. And then the clock is also paused when the claim goes into the injuries board process until an authorization is issued, and 6 months after that, and that's when the clock starts again. So I suppose the main thing to remember here is there's a significant amount of time. Sorry, just go back to, yeah, perfect. If there is a significant amount of time that a claimant solicitor has and a claimant has to make a claim, and what we see more often than not is they will wait the 2 years to make that claim, you know, in the hope that, you know, the club has not done a proper robust incident investigation. So, you know, they might say, look, I'm sure the person might not have taken, you know, downloaded to the CCTV and it'll be well gone by the time we make a claim. They might not have taken photographs. You know, the main witnesses or the main people who could help the club defend the claim might not be there 2 years later. So, you know, all that would work against the club in trying to defend a claim. So really the important thing to take from this is the actions that you take now will prove to be very, very helpful, even in a few years down the line. If you record, you know, the details of the incident, if you take really good statements, you know, take photographs, all the relevant information that's needed, you'll be in a much better position to defend a claim down the line, especially as well when it comes to the repetitive strain type injury type claims. You know, you might be able to say to the insurance company, actually, this person told me they had an issue with their wrist 5 years ago, and I wrote that down and I recorded it, and I took you know, I took the statement and I reported that to the insurance company, and the insurance company then it will give them a really good defense to say, look, you're actually out of time, your statute of limitations is up, and you know, you're not in a position to make a claim anymore, and that would be a really good defense. So it's all about making sure you get the relevant information and record the relevant information as soon as possible and report it to the insurance company. So if you just want to move on to the next slide then. Yeah, perfect. So just to go through, so I suppose how damages are awarded through the Personal Injuries Assessment Board. So basically they base their awards on the Book of Quantum. So the Book of Quantum is based on historical awards. It's very easily accessible through the Personal Injuries Assessment Board website. Anyone can go on and see that the level of awards they can possibly get when they have an incident or an injury. The awards are vastly higher than really anywhere else in the EU, and there's a lot of inconsistency as well because they're based on previous court awards. You could have a judge who might, you know, award a certain amount on a Monday and could award something completely different on a Friday, depending on the type of witness witness the claimant, they feel the claimant might make. The awards are based on the age of the victim, you know, whether they're male or female, and how the injuries have affected their quality of life and implications into the future. But I suppose, as Kieran mentioned, there has been a lot of developments in the personal injuries area of late. So in late April 2021, the new personal injuries guidelines were brought in. So effectively they will replace the Book of Quantum. So the guidelines will replace the Book of Quantum, and any claim that goes into the Injuries Board from, I think it's the 27th of April 2021 onwards, will be based on the new guidelines. And the new guidelines are the damages that would be awarded through the new guidelines are a lot lower than the Injuries Board, than the Book of Quantum awards that have previously come out. So they're the courts, the judges as well. So if a case went to court, if it came out of the Injuries Board and went to court, the judges do have to refer to the guidelines as well in their judgments. So it's really it's a way of trying to make sure that the judges are keeping in line with the guidelines within their judgments if a claim came out of the Injuries Board. We did I suppose a review where there's a lot of information coming out as to, you know, are the guidelines being implemented, and what are the awards coming out of the Injuries Board at the moment. And we've noted that the average awards for general damages are decreasing by 46%. So in the last 5 to 6 months that the guidelines have been implemented, the awards are going down, which does sound good, and you know, that is something that you hear a lot of in the media. But I suppose what you don't hear of is you know, the acceptance rate. So there's actually been a drop in the acceptance of awards by claimants from 50% to 41%. So while the damages, while the awards are going down, the actual number of people who are accepting these awards is also going down. So that will give the claimant leave to issue proceedings. If they decline the awards by the Injuries Board, they can go ahead and issue proceedings. So that is going to increase costs of a claim straight away. So really it remains to be seen, and as Kieran said earlier, it remains to be seen, and it'll be another 12 to 18 months before we see some of these claims that have been taken out of the Injuries Board and going into court and actually getting judgments from the judges. It'll take that long to see. They'll have to wash through the courts before we can see, are the guidelines actually having an effect on the personal injuries awards. So we'll have to wait and see. So I think then moving on to the insurer's claims process. So I suppose just to touch on this, so I suppose effectively how the insurance company will deal with claims. So also very important that they'll get the notification in as soon as possible. They will review the file, they'll review the information that you've provided. They'll make sure that there's no issues such as, have you reported the incident in on time? Have you or is there a delay? Is there any type of a delay in reporting the incident? Based on the information that you will give the insurance company, they'll apply a reserve. So basically a money value as to how I suppose what they think the claim is possibly worth at the moment based on the information that they have. They will, if they need to investigate it further, they'll appoint a loss adjuster, or they might basically make a decision on liability based on the information that they currently have. But it's important to provide all the relevant information that you have to the insurance company as soon as possible. They'll make a liability decision, and so effectively they'll make a decision on do they feel that the club is responsible for an incident, or can it be defended, and they'll decide on what the best approach is to deal with the claim. If a claim goes legal, they do have their own panel solicitors, so they'll have their own solicitors they can appoint in the event that the case goes legal. So just on the next slide then, deals with loss adjusters. So I suppose not something that maybe people on this call would deal with every day. So they're appointed by the insurance company to investigate the incident or investigate the claim. So the important thing to remember is they're on your side. They're appointed by the insurance company, but they're experts in the claims process. They'll go out every day and they'll see the different types of claims that you're having. What they want to do is come up with I suppose a view on how the incident occurred, and if it can be defended, or if it needs to be, if it should be settled, or is there any way of defending the claim. They'll provide a report to the insurance company, who will then make a decision on liability. I think it's very important to, you can have a good chat with the loss adjusters. Even though their job is just there to, to investigate the claim, they will sit down with you and have a chat and talk to you about your processes and procedures and what they're seeing every day. They're probably going into different types of clubs every day, seeing these types of incidents, and they might say, well, look, certain clubs are doing X, Y, and Z to try and prevent these types of incidents, and they might give you some ideas on how to I suppose put procedures in place to put you in a better position to defend a claim. So the main thing is work with them, provide all the information that they need, and make sure they have that, so that they can make a really good decision on, or advise insurers, so that they can make a good decision on whether a claim can be defended or it needs to be settled. If you just move on to the next section then, which is early reporting. So as we said earlier, very important to make sure that an incident is reported to the insurance company as soon as possible. There is a condition precedent to indemnity in your insurance policy, which effectively means you need to report all incidents to the insurance company. Now, you might want to have a chat with Irish public bodies, as to what type of incidents they need to be seen coming in, and how they should be reported. But we would say report all incidents to your broker, to Marsh, for onward reporting to the insurance company. If incidents are not reported as soon as they occur, or if the first notification of an incident to an insurance company is a solicitor's letter or a PIAB document, they could reserve their rights. They could say there was a delay in notification, and that would be a difficult position to put Marsh in, or for Marsh to deal with, and we'd have to try and persuade the insurance company to deal with their claim. They could argue that their position has been prejudiced. They could argue that possibly witnesses, there's no statement, so witnesses are no longer available to help us in the defense of the claim. They could say that the accident location has changed, or the equipment that was being used has changed or altered and no longer available for inspection, so we can't prove that there was no issue with the ground or the equipment or whatever it was. And they might say they've missed the opportunity to dispose of the claim early, and possibly they'll incur further costs. But I think the important thing to remember is this is also a missed opportunity for yourselves, because if you're not highlighting these incidents when they occur and investigating these incidents when they occur, you will also lose the opportunity to learn and to see exactly how the incident occurred, and to put measures in place to try and prevent it from occurring again. So just moving on to the next slide then. So the next slide deals with really the key aspects of accident investigation. So really should be done really for all incidents, certainly all serious incidents. Really what we should be having is an accident investigation pack and retain all the relevant information when it comes to an incident. So the accident investigation report, the accident report form, the witness statements, we'll deal with them in the next couple of slides. But, you know, photographs very important when it comes to an incident. You know, was the floor wet? Have we photographs of the floor? Anything like that. Training records, you know, it's not just good enough to say a person, you know, was trained. We need to have records signed and retained. Procedures, you know, are you letting the insurance company know straight away that, you know, the supervisors were following the correct procedures that the club has in place. Pre and post risk assessments, very important to have. Schedules when it comes to like cleaning schedules or anything like that, that's certainly important to have. I've mentioned CCTV before, and anything else that's of relevance. Really having all the information ready to send to your insurance company again allows them to make a quick, robust decision on you know, can they defend the claim. So if we just move on to the next slide. So witness statements and accident report forms, just when you're filling these out. So it's important to remember these are discoverable documents. So what we mean by that is, you know, these can actually get into the hands of the claimant or the plaintiff, the person who's making the claim, their solicitors down the line once a case goes legal. So they can get those all that documentation through discovery. So it's keep that in mind when you're filling out an accident report form, or when you're completing a statement, or when you're taking a statement from someone. You know, make sure to just keep to the facts. You know, no opinions. Just, you know, who was involved in the incident, what happened, where it happened, when it happened, and then most importantly, how it happened. You know, it's best not to comment, you know, on why it happened. That's something else that you can look at later down the line, or the relevant people can look at later down the line. You know, most people are just want to make sure that they find out the exact facts of how an incident occurred, and, you know, who, what, where, and when, really effectively. You know, it's important to, when it comes to statements, it's important to make sure you record everything. So the claimant said is just as powerful as out of the corner of my eye, I saw this. You know, if you take those statements as soon as possible, you are, you know, people are going to remember them straight away. Whereas if you go back and try and take a statement from someone a year down the line, they're not going to remember the vital pieces of information that they will remember the day after the incident, or a couple of weeks after the incident. Certainly there should be a process in place for the clubs whereby the accident report forms and the statements are reviewed. So, you know, you can have someone who's gathering the relevant information, but certainly for that documentation to be sent on to the insurance company, it should be reviewed by a senior person, just to make sure that they're happy that the incident report form, what's recorded on the incident report form is matches what's written on the statements, and have a look at the statements, and have a look at photographs, CCTV, whatever it is, and make sure that, you know, it all adds up. And if there is some questions that need to be answered, then, you know, look into it a bit further and get more information. You wouldn't believe the amount of times we get an incident report form in which just says someone fell, or someone injured themselves carrying equipment, or that type of information is not really great to send into the insurance company. You need to drill down into it in a lot more detail. I was looking at one earlier where you have a guy was injured while training, and that was the type of information that was given on the incident report form. That doesn't really tell the insurance company very much, and straight away they're probably, the claims handler, who's very busy and is probably seeing 500 incident report forms every day, might say, well, look, the club is probably liable for this, and there's no documentation, there's no training records, there's no procedure guides, anything like that. So, when filling out an incident report form, you need to make sure you provide as much information as possible. You could say the person was completing training or pre-competition training, their training records are attached. Their training format was in line with the club's procedures and the club's training guidelines. The risk assessments are up to date and they're signed and they're attached. The safety procedures are there and they're all attached. The person was well aware of the type of training that they were involved in at the time. If there's equipment, if the incident involved equipment, you check the equipment. The equipment is regularly maintained and no issues in that regard. The supervisors were all there and trained and working. The procedure was working correctly when the incident occurred. So it's very important to make sure you provide as much information as possible to the insurance company. Independent witnesses also very important to make sure you get that information as soon as possible. So the investigation report then can be looked at once you have the relevant information from the incident report completed. So the investigation report is really with accident prevention in mind. Again, you're looking at the facts, but you're also looking at why this incident occurred. So you're trying to see, well, why did it occur? What can we do to prevent it from occurring again? Is there further training needed? Is there a change of procedure? Were we working in line with all our processes and procedures? And ask the injured party for a description of their events, because certainly we've seen a lot of times where versions of events can change over time, and it's important to make sure you do that in a timely manner. So just moving on to just defending claims then. So I suppose the main thing to remember to defend a claim. To defend a claim, you need both documentary evidence and witness evidence. Certainly documentation is what, if a case goes into court, that's what a judge wants to see. The evidence really will need to show, that the risk to health and safety has been evaluated. You have your risk assessments done, that you've put a procedure in place to adequately reduce or minimize that risk. And that the staff are trained, so aware of all the procedures that the club have in place. The staff are trained in that, and then at the time of the incident, the procedure was working correctly. So the amount of times we see such a person was doing a particular task, and we have training, and yes, we know what the safe process is, and to do that particular task, and we think we have a great defense for a particular claim. But then another volunteer, another member might come along and say, well, look, actually, while we do have those processes in place, we don't really do this particular task in this particular way. We probably take a bit of a shortcut, and your defense to a claim then it's very difficult to try and defend a claim. So your processes and procedures have to be working correctly at the time. Your supervisors have to ensure that you make sure that the members are implementing them. And then, so when an incident occurs, you need to make sure it's recorded and investigated, and then always be learning, always be seeing if there's any way to to improve your processes and procedures, to reevaluate the procedure, to see if there's any way of improving those processes. So effectively, documentation is key. The claimant has 2 years to make a claim, so it's important to make sure you have all that information and retain it. Beware of loose words and accident report forms and post-accident investigations. These documents can be disclosable or discoverable to the claimant solicitors down the line. And if there is any suggestion of fault within the report forms, then the claimant solicitors will jump on that and try and use that to try and win the case. So I suppose, final points, just a claim is defended before it occurs. It's all based on your processes and procedures. You can never have too much documentation, but you do need to find a balance. So, you don't want to be, I suppose, drowning in paperwork either. So you do need to find a balance. Accurate and timely recording of the relevant information is absolutely vital. And, really do try and learn from past experience from other clubs, what type of incidents are occurring. Is there any trends? Is there anything that we should be, looking out for and changing processes and procedures? And then, just constantly try and improve the systems to make sure that incidents are I suppose, not occurring, but you're in a good position to defend them if they do occur.